Everyone, it's Joe from Loudwire. Sitting next to me is Hansi and John from Demons and Wizards, also Blind Guardian and Iced Earth.
Good to be here.
Hello, hello.
Thanks so much
Great
for
honor.
coming in.
Hey, fun.
You're here to talk about the new Demons and Wizards album, simply titled 3.
Yeah.
And your last album, though, was inspired by the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, which really got me thinking, there's so many novels out there, pieces of literature that really lend themselves to the metal realm and kind of speak to just being metal, and which has obviously invaded a lot of the lyrical realm of metal over the last half a century. So I want to know, just you guys personally, what is the most kind of metal piece of fiction?
Well, there are many.
Think of?
But since we spoke about the Dark Tower, let's stay with the Dark Tower for a second. Stephen King is genius, and it's not the most typical fantasy story because it also includes Western movie aspects. It contains a lot of mythology, which is similar to fantasy, of course. There's sci-fi in it. There's a lot in it. Stephen King somehow managed to involve all his universes into that one. Back in the 90s, when I started working on these books on a Blind Guardian album, I didn't know that, of course. No one knew he would go into that direction back then. But he did when we did Touched by the Crimson King. And what is very funny, you are a Stephen King fan and you love The Stand, and also The Stand is related to it. Randall Flagg is the Man in Black. That's a rhyme. Can't get any better.
You're such a good lyricist. You're rhyming in the interview.
It's almost like it's his job.
So, John, when you were first reading Stephen King, what jumped out at you that really related to a lot of the music that you were listening to, and how did you feel that was working in harmony or in tandem there?
I've always been attracted to really dark stuff, which is why I fell in love with Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper as a little kid. And so those horror stories, or I think my first King book might have been Carrie, not sure. Very dark, and Pet Sematary, but The Stand for me was kind of the ultimate King. It's my favorite thing, and it's just that whole apocalyptic vibe. I don't know, it goes hand in hand with heavy metal.
When starting listening to heavy metal, for me, every song was about fantasy. I didn't pay too much attention to the words, but because of the album covers, beats, whatever, Before the Storm by Samson, whatever, it didn't matter. Deep Purple, it was all about fantasy, and in most of the cases it wasn't. It was established later on by bands like Blind Guardian and Iced Earth.
Now, those images that you saw on the album cover, did that kind of align with the images that you had in your head when you were reading some of these stories?
Not so much the album covers, but the music itself, which I sometimes, as mentioned, misinterpreted. They were linked to a book I read around the same time. So let's say I was a big Awaken the Guardian fan of Fate's Warning, which is fantasy inspired. But I was reading Stephen King's It at that time, and they were connected. And so the pictures I had in my mind when reading It were somehow related to the music and to Fate's Warning as in its whole. I even think Stephen King sometimes goes into a story a little straighter. He just loses himself, which I appreciate, in side stories, in many side stories.
Yeah, you have a lot of time on the road to get lost in those side stories.
But that's one of the reasons I got away from the King stuff later, because it was so much like I can't do this. I can't invest the time.
Just give me what I need and get the story going.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, and dude, I'm very detail oriented, but I need to have something that keeps me interested the whole way through. I mean, and writing songs, I know that when I write a song, then there's the step of production of that song, and that's millions of details piled up. Every single one of them count to get to that end result. So, I'm aware of that, but when I'm investing my time in somebody else's art, I want to get to the point.
So Stephen King, we've covered. Who else? What other authors? What other stories do you feel that connect with heavy metal?
A lot of stories, and if not, I make it fit somehow. But in the case of J.R. Tolkien, I don't think there is any question. Whether we speak about the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings, and the Lord of the Rings, of course, is more prominent and had been abused more times in metal than maybe any other fictional fantasy story. And what I have to say about The Lord of the Rings is it influenced a lot of bands and also a lot of authors. Therefore, it stands up in the ranking on number one, no matter how you look at it. I assume this might have been even a little important for you.
You know, I prefer to get into the historical stuff when I do the reading, and
You
I
even
think
have that in The Lord of the Rings, you know.
yeah,
there's-
sure. But I mean, there's plenty of horrors in the real world too. You know what I mean? And I guess I've always been drawn to the dark stuff for whatever reason. I mean, one of my favorite stories is Spawn, the comic book. You know, the story of this guy gets betrayed by the government, assassinated, sells a soul to be with his wife, but comes back. She's married to his best friend, has a kid. Like he's this demon that's supposed to serve hell, and that kind of inspired me to do the Dark Saga record and to get with McFarlane and stuff. So there's been, you know, a lot of different influences from all of this stuff.
Now, John, I think I have one that might kind of strike a perfect balance here, which is Orson Scott Card, the whole Seventh Son series that he wrote. Whether Iron Maiden actually based their album on it or not is debatable, depending on who you ask. But a lot of it is alternate history.
Okay.
And in telling the story of this prophet who was born with the gift of second sight. So that's another. Obviously, I think Iron Maiden have got a lot of people into reading fiction novels. Is that one that you're familiar with? That story?
For me, no, it's not. But I love the record. Actually, it's one of my favorite Maiden albums. It's amazing.
My all-time favorite album.
Yeah, it's killer. Fucking
No
killer.
way.
Yeah.
It's Number of the Beast. Number of the Beast is
over.
mine. But it's such a great one. There's so many amazing songs on that album.
Are you familiar with Orson
No.
Scott Card? He wrote
But-
Ender's Game as well.
Yeah, I know Ender's Game. But I do not know this one because of Iron Maiden, basically, because I disagree with the two of you. I don't like the album. I never got into the album, so I also agree.
Heresy. How dare you?
Speaking of side tangents, we're on one now. All right, let's get into this.
But you know, I agree, and I know that Maiden, you know, has have inspired a lot of people in reading that stuff. But for me, it was the opposite. There, I never got into the album, so I never read the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Shut it down.
No, not at all.